Hi guys, my name is Molly Johnson.
And I'm Ifeanyi Aneke.
And I am part of the global team here in Atlanta.
And I'm part of the Nigerian team over there in Africa.
And Ifeanyi and I have known each other for a long time. We've gotten to team together with our teams, but this is the first thing just the two of us have ever gotten to do together.
Exactly.
So we're really excited. I was excited when they were like, maybe we put Molly and Ifeanyi together. I was like, yes. Ifeanyi is a great man of God, and his stories are really important. So I'm excited for you guys to get to hear some of his stories. This workshop is a workshop for young people, but you don't have to be a young person to be here. But we know how it is. It's very boring to just sit and listen to two people talk to you for a long period of time. So it's better if we talk to one another back and forth. It's better if you guys pause your ideas. There's going to be a very short period of time where we talk about some things, and then there's going to be more period of time where we ask questions back and forth. So we do this in youth group, and some of you are in the youth group that I'm part of, so you know how this is. We can sit in long, awkward silences for as long as you guys would like to. So the more you jump in, the better it'll go. But first, we'd like to just quickly go around the room and say your name and your favorite dessert, but like so fast, like in like 3 words or less, okay? I'll give an example. Molly, fruit pizza.
Pizza.
Liz, fruit salad.
Ooh, they're fruity dessert people.
Addie, and chocolate ice cream.
Me? Maggie, brownies.
Oh, Maggie, it's fun to see you.
Jordan, and chocolate chip cookie with a little bit of salt on top.
Oh, specific.
Jane Allen, ice cream.
Annika, ice cream.
Emmy and the chocolate delight from Dreamland. You
Oh,
haven't had
this
it.
is very good. Yeah.
Levi, lemon poppy seed cookies.
Fancy.
Ava, sweet beer float.
Julia, ice cream. Abby, brownies.
Gavin, ice cream cake.
Better, yeah.
Edgar, apple pie.
Geo, favorite cookies.
Moses, ice cream.
Jackie, protein yogurt. Darling, macaron. Two, ice cream.
Judah, flan.
Also Judah, and I'll be just not anything.
Me, orange.
Mimi, ice cream.
Ron, ice cream.
Selena Pavlova.
Pavlova's amazing.
Wow.
So good.
Erica, probably Dairy Queen blizzards.
Savannah and ice cream.
Shay, and I'll eat anything sweet.
Shay one time came over to my house for breakfast, and I made savory breakfast, and she really was like, I don't like. She only wants water.
Tegan and peppermint crisp fridge tart.
Oh, we're going over to Tegan sometime.
So
Very excited.
Of course.
I'm Virginia. Anything? Yeah, great. Saint and powdered Nutella beignets.
Oh. What I'm hearing here is we could have a good time at a Dairy Queen together.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. So Ifeanyi and I wanted to start by asking you 2 questions, and we're not all going to answer them or anything like that. We're just going to give a couple minutes for each one. We would like to encourage you, the less religious you are with your answers of like, oh, I know the right answer, and the more honest you are with like where you are in knowing Jesus, because that's really what we're talking about today, is these essential things we have found to following and knowing Jesus. The more honest you are about what is compelling to you and what is hard with you, the better the conversation goes. Because we know you guys know the right answers. You guys got that. But we really want to know like what for your heart, for where you are about knowing Jesus, and to answer these questions. So first, what makes you want to know Jesus? And anyone can answer. The second one, so you can prepare yourself, is what makes it hard for you to know Jesus. So first, anyone, you don't need to raise your hands or anything. Just like toss out your answers. What makes you want to know Jesus?
Because I have a fear of losing control, and also like waking up one day and finding out that I have wasted my entire life and nothing had any purpose. So, woo woo, fun times. And also, I have severe anxiety.
Is that why you want to know Jesus?
This is all because if I don't know Jesus, all of this is just
Crippling.
too much.
Yeah.
I think if I didn't know Jesus, I would not be here.
Yeah.
I don't think I would want to have lived anymore. But he's like the reason that I still love life. He's the reason that, you know, and I went into public school this year, and I've been in private school my whole life. And I made a lot of choices on music and stuff that I decided to listen to that weren't the smartest. And Jesus was there to turn me around. But it's like, there would be days that I would just wake up and God would just be like, hey, today I'm just going to give you a really great day just so that you can kind of celebrate life. That you are alive and that I'm giving you this life. And it's like, without him, I wouldn't have a purpose. I wouldn't want to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
And he gives me not only a reason to live, but also joy in my life.
That's great. We're gonna have popcorn round, so you guys don't have to. You can answer just real short too. It's like, what makes you want to know Jesus?
Anybody?
For me, kind of a similar answer as her, but like just like seeking like that that profound peace and like safety, like because like I'm a huge perfectionist, and especially like going to like a private school and stuff, like it's very like it can be very competitive, and I'm very grateful for like the education I was able to receive, but like I don't know, that standard-based stuff just always like kind of put me in a bad like mindset. And I think that safety and that peace and being able to celebrate life like through a new like lens has just like really helped me view everything like from a new perspective. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The ability to give grace, like receiving it, being able to even partially replicate what that looks like.
Recently I realized that something that like drew me to the Lord before I even knew that it really was the Lord is like when I had joined youth group, I was hearing about like fourth ball, and it all sounded very exciting and very big. And I remember thinking like people had used words like quiet and shy, or like just very small words or things that make me feel insignificant, even if they weren't trying to be rude or anything, but it was words that made me feel like I was living a smaller life than I was made to be. So then something the Lord was showing me recently was that that's how he drew me in, was by showing me that in Love Your City, but then like that really was him, and that he was much bigger, and that people would use words like brave and like these bigger words like courageous and stuff that he would use to describe me.
We'll do a couple more. We'll move on.
The desire to know the truth and worship God.
I'm on a big hunt for what's true and untrue. I like to separate them out too.
it was a big thing for me when I met the Lord, and I think still is, that it's not just like there is a God, but that he'd want to have a personal relationship with me, and that I would get to know him. He's not just some big all-ruling person, but he's someone I can know personally.
Those are great answers. What makes you want to know Jesus? In a few words.
I'd say really just like she shared when she was saying that we could just get caught up with life and just the things happening around us, that personally I felt like, is there a purpose to life? So to find purpose, to find meaning to life, I really want to know Jesus.
What makes it hard for you guys to know Jesus? You're going about your life, you have a good moment, and then you can't find him. What makes it hard to know Jesus? What gets in the way for you?
When your friends don't believe in him,
That's a big one.
and like especially because I am in theater, and I love the people in my theater, but some of them are very lost, and I feel like I have to be so careful about what I say around them because I don't want to lose them as friends. And so it's like, and you, like, I want to love them, but I don't want to seem like I'm supporting the things they stand for, because I don't. and it just makes it so hard because it feels like a video game level. Like the entire day, it's like dodging bullets. You're like, wait, hold on, I didn't mean that.
Oh yeah.
What else? What makes it hard for you to know Jesus personally?
It seems like such an elementary thing, but it's like understanding that you don't have to earn, anything, but you just receive. And while it's something to know, it's hard to actually believe it and live that out. Because for me, I don't know, like even in the the practice of solitude and building the secret places, like, well, if I could just get my Bible more, then I can grow closer to God. And you will do those things, like if you commit yourself to reading the Bible. But it's so easy to turn it into a practice of like, well, I just have to pray for this person, I have to do this, to earn God's love. And it's hard to actually believe that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one. There's a speaking to you about that one too.
I get distracted a lot, and then it's like hard to get back into a rhythm of spending time with God.
I think it's hard for me to not feel like I'm in control sometimes, and then also like experiencing suffering and like not knowing where to target, like feeling like you have to target your anger at something, and sometimes like in a season of suffering you can target your anger at God, and I feel like that's like difficult sometimes.
These are all very real things, and it's very real that God is completely knowable and very close and wants to know you. He's not tricky. It's also very real that we have brokenness that is in our hearts and in the world, and we're wrestling through it. We're wrestling through displacing darkness with light in every moment, and so it's very real. We have these 5 things. I'm going to tell them to you really quickly, and then Afeni and I are going to just share different parts of our story, and then get back to some questions and stuff. These 5 tools, they're called forgotten pieces, that we believe are essential for young people, but really all people, but for young people to know Jesus in a way where it's alive, the way that I know Afeni, but even closer. So first, learning to hear and obey God's voice. Hear and obey, 2 words. Second is living in moment-to-moment intimacy with God, or closeness with God, if you don't like the word intimacy. Embracing life of faith, even if there's pain. Finding and fulfilling God's purpose for your life. God's purpose for your life. And then life in the power of the Holy Spirit. So those are the 5 tools. We're going to touch on them in our story, but Afeni, do you want to tell some of your stories with these 5 things?
Yeah, I would really highlight significantly 2 of them, which is hearing and obeying God's voice, and then also finding and fulfilling God's purpose for your life. And then we can see we are living by the power of the Holy Spirit, embracing a life of faith, even when pain is the result, and living in moment-to-moment intimacy is interwoven in all of that. So, I grew up in the church. My dad is a pastor, so I was raised as a missionary kid. So I was taught how to do the right things, say the right words, but I didn't really have a personal relationship with Jesus. So I was growing up, and after my elementary school, I left home to live with cousins, my auntie, and then because the high school where I went to was far from home, so I had to live in with them, and it felt like, okay, now I'm far away from home. It felt like I had a little level of freedom, but somehow because of the trainings I had, I was still trying so much to live uprightly. But there was a vacuum in me which was yearning for a feeling, and I just kept going until eventually I finished college. And before I finished college, actually was in my last year in high school. One of the days I just returned back from a boarding school, and I came to church that very day, and the pastor was speaking, and at the point he made some significant points, and he said, if you're not sure that you really have a personal relationship with Jesus, I think when others are leaving, you shouldn't go. You should just stay back and make sure that that happens before you leave. And because I already had a lot of questions in my heart as far as my relationship with Jesus and how solid it is, I stayed back even though it took a while because there were a lot of people who wanted to have counseling sessions with him. But I know that that day was the day I really, with all my heart, surrendered my life to Jesus, and it was just like starting afresh with him. No longer just on the wings of my parents and just doing the right things because they are there guiding me and telling me what to do. So my life changed significantly, and I started that relationship, which helped me through my college and degree program. And I had this passion really to study medicine, to become a medical doctor, because of the passion I have to save lives. And I thought the only way I could do that is by going to med school. So after trying the admission process in Nigeria, it didn't quite work out. So I had to study something different, plant science and biotechnology, crazy. So I came out and I was still feeling empty because it felt like this is not what I'm called to do, and I don't see myself in this career. So I went for a 1-year national service, which we call youth service in Nigeria. And after that, I was willing to go back and still go to med school. That was how serious it was. So, but then life happened. I tried a couple of things, it wasn't working. And it felt like my parents have supported me so much, and it's time for me to do something to also support them. It was at that moment that I really got to a point where I said, I really need to understand and know for sure what God's purpose for my life is. So I started questioning God. I started questioning my dad, my mom. I asked them a lot of questions because I felt like one of the days I came to my dad and I said, what did God tell you about me? And he kept quiet for a while, and at a point he said, well, one thing I know is that God's hand is upon you, and even though the purpose he has in your life is not very clear to me, but I know for sure his hand is upon you. And it felt like that's not what I'm looking for. I need specific answers. So I was frustrated, I was depressed, but it pushed me further really to strengthen my relationship with Jesus and begin to seek him to really find out what his purpose for my life was. And it was in the midst of all of these things that God spoke to me one of the days. I was all alone in the room by myself, and I heard him say, Ifeanyi, doctors are restricted to the four walls of a hospital and can only heal those who are sick in their body. But out there are people who are not just sick in their body, but psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, they are sick. These are the ones I've called you to heal. And I turned around and I felt like, what exactly does that mean? I mean, how am I going to do that? Am I just going to go into the street and begin to ask everybody I see, are you emotionally, spiritually, psychologically? I can help you. I mean, and then with the fact that growing up, I am this person who is very shy and would not be able to do what I am doing right now. Even when I have the right answers to a question in class, I would rather not stand up to answer it. I would rather keep it to myself. That was how shy I was. And it affected me so much because I had this low self-esteem and my self-image was very poor. But it was in the midst of all this that the Lord was telling me, this is what I've called you to do, which I started looking at the dreams and revelations he has given to me. And it was like standing before people like this to speak to them, working with people even on one-to-one basis. And I felt like I don't know the possibility and how this is ever going to come to pass. But with that revelation and with what he said to me, it became clear to me that really this is his purpose. He didn't want me to be a medical doctor and end up in a hospital, but he wanted me to just be everywhere, really. Not restricted by anything, but being able to just cut across all classes of people and then be able to fulfill his purpose for my life. And that was how I started digging to really find out daily what does that mean. And eventually, Boy with the Ball came, and it was like, this is it. This is where I belong. And 10 years down the line, I can tell you that I'm very happy that I obeyed God and followed His purpose for my life.
I in 8th grade, my family is a great family, but we didn't know Jesus as a family. We have a lot of things we are good at, but that piece was missing. And in 8th grade, my mom sent me to a church camp so that I could make friends because I was very shy. And so I went to a church camp with some of the neighbor kids on the street, and the guy was standing there talking about hearing God's voice. And I thought, if God spoke, that would be so helpful to me because I have so many questions. And I'm hurting in a bunch of ways. And I deal with all these voices in my head all the time, like my own voice, and I didn't know it at the time, but the enemy's voice, it was all the time, and it was never quiet. And I just thought if he talked, that would be really helpful, because I think he might say something that would help me. And I met Jesus. Jesus showed up in the room, and I just remember thinking, like, he's real, and everything he says is real. And I went home, and I kept telling people about this idea of, like, I want to learn how to hear God's voice, and no one around me believed in it, and no one around me thought it was real. And so I just kind of slowly over time thought maybe that was a pipe dream, and maybe that was hyper-emotionalism of camp, and maybe, I'll find some other thing. But if I'm really honest, deep in my heart, I met Jesus, but even after I started to make wilder decisions and rougher decisions, I always wondered if I could hear his voice, and I always wanted to hear his voice. So when I was a freshman in college, at this point, I really would not consider myself attempting at all to find Jesus anymore. I was really kind of attempting to run off and move to some foreign country and, I don't know, eat croissants and find myself in some creative way. Joey and I were talking about this. The idea that, like, I'm going to find the answers in myself is a difficult one because I know myself and it's pretty broken and messy. So the idea that I'm going to just sit real quiet with myself for a while and find something better was a tricky one for me that I got trapped in for a while. But I needed something external and bigger and better than what I had inside myself. So I was in college, wasn't doing super well, and I met Boy with Ball. And I really came as an intern to do graphic design, and I was really not interested in their whole missions world. I was a writer and graphic designer, but I was interested, and I sat quietly in the room a lot of times because they talked about hearing God's voice. And they would say things that made me so angry, like, make sure to tell young people it's not hard to hear his voice. And I was like, it is so hard. It's like, I just remember sitting there and thinking, like, they don't get it, it's so hard. And it made me, but I was so curious, and it was the first group of people I found that talked about it. There are years in between these stories, but then a few years down the line, after I'd worked there and was, like, slowly they started to love me. Christine would tell me stuff about that would happen in the book of Acts. They told me the disciples were young people. I said, okay. They'd say stuff like, if he talked then, if he did miracles then, is he still able to do it now? And I was like, yeah, I know. And then one day, Joey, who you guys know, we weren't doing too well together. And we made a couple of mistakes in a row, and we just got really scared. And Joey prayed, which I thought was really shocking, because we weren't the praying types of characters. And he prayed that the Lord would change everything if we were supposed to end up together, which I did like the idea of ending up with Joey. So, and the next day, the Lord started to show me all these lies in my heart that I believed. And he started to speak to me. And he offered to take away the lies that were in my heart. And he showed me some places, specifically when I was a kid, where I got hurt, and I picked that on as part of my identity instead. And I just remember I, in a very messy and disastrous state, drove as quickly as I could to Jamie and Kathy's house and crying, and they prayed with me for a while. I was filled with the Holy Spirit. And I remember it was the first time my head was quiet, and all those voices that made me feel terrible weren't there. And I felt really hopeful, and I could hear his voice. I went on, and we'll tell the story very quickly because I think we can get into other things soon. But Pretty quickly after that, and Joey has his own story that I'll let him tell. Joey went through something pretty similar, where the Lord started to bring up lies in his heart, and he filled the Holy Spirit, and we were pretty shockingly different people in a matter of like 3.5 weeks, which was very shocking for a lot of people, a lot of friends, my family, everybody. Were really, really different. But I just remember he just started speaking, and I thought it was really interesting because the moment I heard the Lord speak, he started to speak about my purpose, and he didn't I didn't have Molly, this is what you will go do with all your days and everything in the land. He just started to speak about my identity and who I was and how who I was is what I'm made to do. And so we were like, well, what do we do? And so, I worked for Youth Development Organization, so that was a good start for me. And he's like, well, first you need a coach. You need somebody who can walk with you through these things. Because as much as this is exciting, you're going to need someone who's a little further along who can, you can talk through stuff. Because even though it's very real what's happening, you're going to have some wacky ideas that are not as real. And you're going to need somebody to bounce it off and make sure it's the voice of the Lord. Like, okay, you're going to need a team. I joined a volleyball team. I also joined a career small group on my campus. And you're going to need a playing field, because the way the Lord works is you learn as you go. You're not going to be ready in a classroom, perfect, and then sent out to the world. You're going to be sent out into your mission field and get ready along the way and have things added to you on the way. So, okay, so me and Joey did these things. We started dating. And then we went into our university, and we joined our volunteering with our church's youth group. That was 3 young people, and we were so excited. And we signed up to lead crew small groups. And things started to happen very quickly. I think there's 2 things that are very important. It was still very, very incomplete for me, hearing God's voice. There were lots of days in between hearing his voice and hearing the next thing. Oftentimes because I still wasn't doing responding to the thing he said here, and was just maybe he'll say something new that I like better. And then there were a lot of crazy stories and mistakes and things that I would do differently now that was 6 years ago, But the Lord was really using me, and those things were true. I was hearing his voice, but hearing his voice was the beginning of hearing him. Was the beginning of knowing him, because then I had to stay close to him to pull off what he had said to do, and it hurt. I lost a lot of friends. It upset my family that I met Jesus. It cost me things that at the moment felt like the biggest things, and now they're not the biggest things, but at the moment it was the biggest parts of me. I had to give up lots of relationships and different dreams that I had that weren't the words for my life. The Holy Spirit was helpful. He's the helper, it's his name, and he's named well. He was helpful, and I needed his power because people like Virginia were there in that time, and they were in my small group, and she was in a different place. That's her story, and you guys should get to know that one too. But she was alone and in Georgia, and she needed to know what the Lord was saying about her life, and I didn't know what he was saying about my life yet, so I really needed the Holy Spirit to tell her what he was saying about her life. And so all of those things, they were not just that I did one and then I nailed this one and got to the rest of them. I needed each of them to get to Jesus. And even today, in this moment of my life, the Lord's speaking a lot to me about, it's not about how talented I am or my ability to produce videos or great content that makes me capable of being in the kingdom. And it's actually not about my ability to nail these 5 things, these 5 forgotten pieces that I get to know Jesus. It's really true that at the end of the day, I want to be Jesus' friend. And I want to be someone who's so close to him that I know what he's thinking, and I know whether he's pleased or not. And I know whether whatever I am is good or not. And then I use these tools to get that. And I use my coaches and my team and my playing field to get that. And I have been known to say to young people, it's not that hard. It's come full circle. And it frustrates them, and I love it, because I'm I know it's frustrating, right? But let's talk about it. Let's get into it. Let's go live it out. So that's my fast version of my story. Those 5 things.
Hearing and obeying God's voice. finding and fulfilling God's purpose for your life, embracing a life of faith even when it results in pain, living by the power of the Holy Spirit, and moment intimacy with God.
They're really, really helpful. And I feel like, at least for me, when I'm spinning out, when it's really an emotional moment, when I really can't figure out what to do next, or I feel all of a sudden like I'm not okay, if I revisit those, I figure out there's something that I've let go of, or like it's been a few days since I've heard him say anything at all. And so the dedication to those things is important. Jesus did them. If you look at his life, you can find all 5 of those pieces. He taught his disciples to do all those pieces. The Holy Spirit was so important that he was like, don't leave this room until the Holy Spirit comes, and then you can go do stuff. But they're really, really important. We wrote a book about him. I wanted to bring it up because it's helpful because it's all condensed into one place. I think the book is the least interesting part. The more interesting part is how you guys and your stories start to live them out. And what happens next is incredibly way more interesting than the book out there. But the book out there helps you. It's designed to fit in your pocket so you can